The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order! The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Red Sun Ryan Luis Rodriguez presiding. We all rise for the Honorable Judge Rodriguez.
Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of The People vs. Superman Returns. 2006's Superman Returns portrays the events surrounding Superman's return to Earth, following a 5-year absence, as he struggles to re-establish his relevance and standing after leaving everything he knew behind. For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty or innocent of being a bad movie. As always, in this courtroom, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Colonel Ryan Smith, you are appearing on behalf of the prosecution. You may begin your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Terminator Dark Fate is a worthy addition to the Terminator franchise that has been unfairly maligned. It's the first movie in the series in decades that feels like a Terminator movie, and it does so by ignoring the later sequels, acting as a direct continuation of Terminator 2, and actually trying to recapture some of what made the franchise so beloved in the first place. It's a movie that was criminally underappreciated at the time of its release, and one I feel will be more favorably evaluated as time goes on.
Prosecution, we're talking about Superman Returns, not Terminator Dark Fate.
Okay, well, unfortunately, I guess I'm not allowed to talk about Terminator Dark Fate on this episode. Instead, for some fucking reason, I'm being forced to revisit the vast expanse of meh that is Superman Returns. A movie that should have been to the Superman franchise what Terminator Dark Fate is to its own series. Superman Returns ignored the later, less successful Superman sequels and acted as a direct continuation of Superman 2, just like Terminator Dark Fate. It tried its best to emulate what made the first two Superman movies successful. In short, this is a movie that tried to be exactly what Terminator Dark Fate is and failed. Superman Returns is a study in squandered opportunities, wasted talent, retroactive creepiness, frustrating near misses, and a fundamental misunderstanding about what makes a Superman movie worth seeing. It's also an odd movie for me to be prosecuting because the people involved obviously tried to make it not just a good movie, but a great one. It's a lot like having to prosecute someone who stole bread because his family is starving. You know, according to the letter of the law, he's guilty and must be punished, but his heart was in the right place.
Hang him.
I find myself facing a similar conundrum when it comes to the makers of this frustrating slog of a film. Their hearts were obviously in the right place when it came to this movie, although very much not in the right place when it came to other things. But according to the letter of the law, they're guilty of making a bad movie despite their intentions. Superman Returns is many things. It's a beautifully photographed movie that doesn't tell a story worthy of its compositions. It's a beautifully scored movie that doesn't provide drama worthy of its music. It's a family film whose production was a breeding ground for sexual misconduct by some of the most powerful people in Hollywood. But most of all, Superman Returns was 2.5 hours of nothing. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, some truly evil people worked on this film, but the film is not in itself an evil thing. It does not plumb the depths of human depravity in the way of, say, a Coleman Francis picture or Pretty Woman. But it wastes its audience time and squanders its affection for the character on a forgettable, pointless story. Sure, it's pretty to look at. Sure, most of the performances are great and the music is fantastic. But what is all that beauty in service of? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, much like Robb Maynard, Superman Returns is a beautifully wrapped box that contains nothing. And that is why you must find this movie guilty.
God damn you for singing to my soul!
I love this guy. He should be here every week.
Thank you, Mr. Colonel Smith, and I would like to add that I just watched Pretty Woman and found it cute. Appearing on behalf of the defense is Mr. Big Ben Haslar. Please present your opening statement.
Sorry, Your Honor, I'm scrambling and rewriting my notes here. I erased half of my case trying to rewrite it to Dark Fate. Brilliant move, Counselor Smith. Brilliant move. But anyway, I'm sorry that this isn't the Superman film you wanted. I'm sorry it didn't have Superman blowing oil into a ship, or bad guys playing a Superman video game that also controls missiles, or Superman flying all the nuclear weapons off the planet in a giant friggin' net, or normal humans surviving in space without a spacesuit, or Superman sawing the top of a volcano, or that he wasn't dark and tortured in a 2-hour commercial for IHOP, or have that him flat out murdering Zod, or that he wasn't quite as, what's the word I'm looking for, soulless as he was in Man of Steel. As for the defense, we believe that this movie does have some shortcomings here and there. What film doesn't? Superman films can be great films, Kal-El. They wish to be. For this reason above all, their capacity for good, studios have sent us Superman Returns, the only halfway decent modern Superman film. A film that is delightfully the antithesis of the Snyder renditions. A film that tries to give you thrills as well as hope. A film that honors the past while simultaneously forging the future. A film with a gorgeous soundtrack, fun performances, and color. Glorious color. It should have gotten a sequel. One was in the works before the studio got cold feet. If they hadn't, perhaps we wouldn't have had the cinematic crimes known as the Zack Snyder DC films. Yes, today the defense will prove to you all while the world needs Superman Returns.
Thank you, Mr. Haslar. And I would like to add that it is a 2.5-hour commercial for IHOP. Prosecution, you may proceed with your first.
I wasn't in
exhibit.
half an hour of it. Sorry, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, there's some things I'd like to stipulate. Nobody's accusing the Zack Snyder films or the second two of the first four Superman Christopher Reeves films of being good.
I am.
This movie cannot stand or fall in comparison to the Zack Snyder gore fests. It has to stand and fall on its own. There are some things I would like to stipulate about this movie. This is one of the prettiest movies I've ever disliked. The compositions are gorgeous.
Thank you, the defense rests.
It's, the music is great. Parker Posey is a joy to watch. Brandon Routh was a great Superman and a great Clark Kent who was served poorly by a boring story. Frank Langella is good in everything. Frank Langella could read a phone book, and you'd pay $5 to watch that. But that being stipulated, there are a few exhibits I'd like to bring forth. First of all, and this might be a small thing, but Martha Kent hasn't bought a new truck in 60 fucking years. She's still driving like a 1945 Ford, and not because it's a classic. It's obviously poorly maintained. Jesus Christ.
Objection, new films are designed to fail. It's a known fact.
Sustained.
Wait, new films are designed to fail? What does that have to do with...
New cars are designed to fail.
New films. He said new films.
Yes, Your Honor, he said new films. Damn. That's a small thing. The goddamn truck shouldn't be older than Eva Marie Saint. That's all I'm saying. Secondly, Brandon Routh is a great Superman and a really great Clark Kent, but he proved that in the DC Arrowverse crossover where he played an alternate universe Superman because he really wasn't given much to do here, which is sad since the film literally has his character's name in the title. He's practically monosyllabic. He isn't given enough humor to sink his teeth into as Clark. Now, Routh has proven he's a funny, charming actor in subsequent roles like the Atom in the Arrowverse. So it's a real shame to see him wasted in this movie. Kate Bosworth is horribly miscast as Lois Lane. She looks like she's about 12. She has approximately zero chemistry with Brandon Routh. Lois in this movie is also just, I think she's underwritten and poorly written. It serves the character poorly. Margot Kidder in the old Superman movies, she banged on Clark a lot, but you always got the feeling that they were friends. In this movie, Lois has this habit of blowing Clark off, never letting him say more than 2 words before she finds an excuse to go somewhere else. You felt like Margot Kidder's Lois had genuine affection for Clark. Kate Bosworth's Lois seems to merely tolerate him, and that's the wrong dynamic. There's absolutely nothing about her performance to explain why either Clark or Superman would want to give her the time of day, let alone moon over her as this great lost love. Speaking of lost love, fuck the I've been gone 5 years secret kid subplot. It's irritating and unnecessary. They could have made this a straight sequel to Superman 2 without this weird, Richard White is an irritating and unnecessary character. And I'm sorry, how many goddamn movies do we have to watch where James Marsden plays a decent guy whose girlfriend is in love with someone else? Give the man a movie where he keeps his girlfriend. Or at least
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Give the man a movie where he not only keeps his girlfriend, but she's satisfied with James Marsden. They also managed
Impossible.
They also managed to make Superman a creep by having him go spy on Lois's family. Also, this is another exhibit I have. This may seem nitpicky, but Superman's powers seem very inconsistent in this film. In the first big action set piece, he has real trouble saving a crashing airliner. In the last big action set piece, he flies a fucking continent of kryptonite into space. A person who had trouble stopping an ocean liner or a crashing airliner should not be able to lift a fucking continent made of the only thing that makes him weak.
Objection. The difference between the two is the plane has people in it that he needs to save, and by using an act of strength against the plane, he tears the wings off of it and things like that. So he needs to find a way to get the plane down safely. Whereas the continent, there's nobody on it.
I have to call you on that, because he is clearly shown having trouble slowing the plane down. It has nothing to do with the fact that he's trying to save the people on it. He's clearly shown having physical trouble slowing the plane down before it hits the ground. Yeah.
The objection to the objection is sustained.
Who won that one?
No, you did, but I think I have grounds for appeal on that. But my point, however, about flying the fucking continent of kryptonite into space stands, because literally 20 minutes before he flies that continent of kryptonite into space, an elderly sexual predator manages to punch him down the stairs in such a way as to really, really injure him. Rule of thumb is, if Kevin Spacey can beat you up, you can't lift a continent. I've always said that.
The Spacey rule.
Like L.A. Confidential.
Speaking of Kevin Spacey, there's a real creep factor about this movie. It's a retroactive creep factor, but it's a creep factor nonetheless. The producer, the director, and the biggest name in the cast have all been very credibly accused of serial sexual misconduct. The producer, John Peters, and the director, Bryan Singer, are actually accused of committing said sexual misconduct during production of this movie. As a matter of fact, John Peters ended up having to pay something like $3.3 million in a settlement for sexual harassment he committed during this movie. Also, speaking of sexual predators, the reason for Clark's absence for 5 years is very vague. Astronomers discovered...
What?
I've moved beyond your Western linear need for segues that make sense. Thank you.
I just didn't know why I had to do with sexual predators.
Open your mind, Quaid. Okay, so... it says at the beginning, the astronomers, and here I'm making air quotes for our listeners at home, discovered the remains of planet Krypton. Now, maybe there's a larger backstory that got edited out, but as presented in the movie, that as a reason for abandoning Earth, all his friends, and his elderly mother for 5 years is selfish and inexcusable. It goes completely against what Superman would actually do. Another problem shared by the earlier, better Superman films, but I will admit, while this film did a little bit better of a job, it didn't really solve the problem. Lex isn't particularly chilling. And I mean, he's very chilling now that you know who he's played by. But
if you're a young actor in Hollywood,
yes. But as the character, the film doesn't play him for laughs as much as the Donner Superman did, but it does play him for laughs. Considering his plan, which, if successful, would involve the largest act of mass murder in the history of the world. Even through the laughs, there needs to be a point where Lex is truly skin-crawlingly chilling. as a character. And that just doesn't happen in any of these movies. To its credit, Superman Returns gives Lex a scene that approaches chilling when he stabs Superman with a kryptonite shard. But the enormity of his plan is just sort of hand-waved away once it fails. And, as I said, while this version of Lex does get the skin-crawling thing down, that's entirely a modern phenomenon because you're watching it in hindsight knowing Kevin Spacey is an odious creep. As it is, Kevin Spacey...
They're playing 4D chess here, Counselor.
As it is, Kevin Spacey, the actor, is far more terrifying than Lex Luthor, the character. Lex's plan is also idiotic. He intends to make money on land speculation by creating a new continent in the Atlantic Ocean, in so doing displacing enough seawater to completely flood most of North America, Europe, and Northern Africa. He even brags that billions of people are going to die. So who the fuck's going to be left to buy his land? Even if any of the survivors want to buy it, a disaster of that magnitude would basically end civilization, which it goes without saying would destroy the global economy. Lex is going to be king of a dust pile. He also, when somebody, Lois says, well, you think they'll let you just keep it? Well, I'll have advanced alien technology thousands of years ahead of what anybody can throw at me. Bring it on. Once he creates the continent, what he has is 2 laptop computers and a lawn chair. That's the entirety of the stuff that Lex has on that continent, for Christ's sake. It's a stupid plan. It was a stupid enough plan when he tried to nuke California, but this one, he is literally destroying his own customer base. So,
objection: there are 1.398 billion people in China. If each one of them paid him $1, he'd be a rich man.
The dollar would the dollar. That's the point. The dollar wouldn't be worth anything. The global economy would
whatever
crash.
his new world currency is, a Lex buck. Yeah. If each one of them paid him a Lex buck, he'd be a rich man.
Lex bucks.
Ooh,
What is he going to buy with it when there's no, there's nothing? He's crashing the means of production. There's no economy left. China's economy is going to collapse because there's no, they're going to lose.
There's no American businesses to put in China
huge
anymore.
Markets. So.
Well, there's California still.
Ultimately,
some of it.
This plan, like this movie, is an exercise in ludicrousness. This, and trust me, I'm coming from a position of, this hurts because I love Superman, and I especially love the Christopher Reeve verse Superman, which this is a continuation of. I went into this movie. I bought a ticket for opening day, and then I went and saw it again in the theaters. I wanted to like this movie. And while I do like it better than the Zack Snyder films, that's a bit like saying that you like chugging an entire bottle of castor oil better than a punch in the stomach. It's marginally better, but it still doesn't make it good. And
we got a Smittyism in here.
All I'm trying to do is prove that it's not bad.
The thing is, the movie is a fundamental misunderstanding of Superman. Where is the joy? Everybody in this movie seems unhappy to be there. That's the main issue, is that nobody in this movie seems happy to be there, with the exception of Parker Posey and the kid who plays Jimmy Olsen. The Superman movies are supposed to be joyous. There's nothing like the banter, the tension, just the playfulness between Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder. There's nothing like that between Brandon Routh and Kate Bosworth. And I submit that that's not just an artifact of the situation they're put into in this script, which is a situation they never should have put them into. It's just an artifact of the fact there's just no chemistry there. The people don't seem to know how to write a movie that's fun. Ultimately, Superman should have been fun. Instead, we get this depressing family drama about an absentee father.
It's when they put the glasses on the kid that gave it away.
But the kid, the kid's another problem. Let's give Superman a kid and not actually make him in any way entertaining or make him, give him anything to do. Except,
what? You didn't love him playing heart and soul with that bad guy? Come on.
This is a story that could have been told without the kid entirely. The character did not need to be there, and he didn't justify his extraneousness by being fun, like, say, a Miss Tessmacher in the first movie. Miss Tessmacher didn't necessarily need to be there, but she was fun. Overall, this movie is guilty of a dearth of fun, a dearth of joy. It does not inspire the wonder and just the sense of fun that the original 1979 Superman did. And with that, I rest my case.
Defense, would you like to present your opening statement? Or not opening statement, excuse me.
Yes, once again, Your Honor. Well, Counselor Smith, I'm sorry this wasn't the Superman film you wanted.
I'm gonna just start talking about Terminator Dark Fate again. So.
No, absolutely not. No, that's not what we're here for. Defense.
Linda Hamilton was fucking great.
Argument.
She was, though.
Sustained.
Well, to touch on some of the things that we sort of already talked about, yes, the performances are fantastic. We've since learned things about Kevin Spacey that are not so great.
Objection,
objection,
Your Honor. We've since learned things about Kevin Spacey that are utterly monstrous.
That are utterly monstrous. So stipulated, sir. Thank you.
Sustained,
but I do believe and encourage you, members of the jury, to believe this as well, that you can love the art but hate the artist. Just because a person can be terrible, it doesn't mean that everything they created has to be. I do understand the argument that by buying their art, it increases their quality of life, essentially while they're active. But in this case, we can take the money out of it by buying a used DVD somewhere. They're not getting a penny out of that sale. That said, Kevin Spacey does a great job of taking what Gene Hackman started in the first two while simultaneously adding touches to make it his own.
Objection, Your Honor. I don't like
ball.
the prospect of Kevin Spacey adding touches to anything.
Could you please not read into the sexual undercurrent of everything I say? Because everything I do has sexual gravitas, sir.
I knew it.
Overruled.
I also love the little touch he does at the beginning where he finishes
objection, Your Honor.
For her.
Go, Ben, go!
I'm going to put up an objection of my own if you guys don't cut this shit out.
Okay, I'm sorry. Apologies, Your Honor. The film does a better job of making Lex more of a cultured man by making him evil as well as brilliant. It humanizes him while also acknowledging he's a villain. He throws out lines like, gods are selfish little beings in red capes who don't share their power with mankind, and he'll give fire to the people, while simultaneously adding, after he takes his cut. Love it. And Brandon, is it Ruth or Ralph, Your Honor?
Ralph.
It's Ralph, okay. And Brandon Routh, I mean, come on. The dude looks like Christopher Reeve. He looks great zipping around the city. He's saving people in that suit. He's also a very likable Clark Kent without doing that god-irritating, oh, gee, golly, Miss Lois shtick that they had in the originals. I mean, come on. He's mild-mannered. He's not a dweeb. But he still maintains that playfulness that we like in a Clark Kent. Like
objection, Your Honor. I've stipulated that Brandon Routh was an incredible Superman.
Exactly, and I'm making that case because my case depends on it.
Yeah. My case is just that it's a great performance isn't enough to save a shitty script.
No,
it is a great
overruling the prosecution. Defense, you may continue.
It is a great performance. The prosecution stipulates that. I would like the jury to make note of that. Anyway, I like when the two coworkers are like wondering if he's Superman, and he like smiles and turns and waves at them. Come on, great moment. And further, Ralph's performance illustrates how lonely he must feel, how lonely anyone who's different than anyone around them must feel. It touches on this note to the right degree, whereas the cough, cough Zack Snyder films hit you over the head with this theme with a friggin' sledgehammer. He portrays Superman as a hero and as a likable gentleman, an embodiment of goodness. I love how he politely steers people away with a good night and a smile when he really does have to be going. You're in his way, but he still cares about you. I love that about Reeves' Superman, and I love that here in Ralph's. He's a very lovable, heroic, good guy, and that's what you want in a Superman. And also, yes, props do need to be mentioned to the guy who plays Jimmy Olsen. The film gives him the time of day, unlike the other films. And of course, the future Mrs. Ryan Luis Rodriguez, Miss Parker Posey, is a very fun foil to Lex in this film.
Oh, I can only dream.
This film takes what people loved about Superman while making it a soft reboot of the Donner films, which most people already loved. Much like the Batman film series, those went off the rails in its third and fourth installments. But we don't need to wipe the slate clean. Just doing so might, make a dark and broody Superman, and we don't want to do that. No, instead we keep what works and throw out what doesn't. It's brilliant.
Objection, Your Honor. There's no way you cannot describe Ralph Superman in this movie as dark and brooding. He might not be...
No, that's what I'm saying.
He might not be sociopathic like the Zack Snyder Superman, but he's a lot darker than the Reeve Superman.
Darker, yes, but not as dark as
Zack Snyder's Superman isn't on trial here, sir.
Neither is Terminator Dark Fate.
I'm illustrating where you could go wrong. This is what this film does right. This is how you could go wrong. It successfully dodged that painfully bad trope. And it is... The film is illustrating that it does this perfectly with the way it opens. We hear the familiar voice of Marlon Brando as Jor-El and the brilliant soundtrack of John Williams starting softly in the background. The music swells and we're thrown into the title sequence, showing us that this indeed is a continuation, but is also something new and updated, and we're already excited. And although Mr. Williams didn't compose this film, John Ottman brilliantly stitches in those familiar themes when we want them. When Lois and Superman are having romantic moments, when Superman's flying in to save the day, it has fun little throwbacks to those Superman films as well, like the statistically speaking quip, or Lois asking coworkers how to spell. If you love the originals, it's giving you an element of what you had, but in a way that feels new and fresh. Another example is the Fortress of Solitude. It takes that design, makes it better, or giving Jimmy Olsen the time of day. Takes what existed, makes it better. And I would also love to mention that this film teaches us that those little dogs are monsters, and you cannot turn your back on them for a second, or they'll friggin' eat you and its sister.
Your Honor, I would like to stipulate that little dogs are monsters.
Yes. As long as we all agree with that, and this film teaches us that. And a final point about the new Krypton island. I do see the problem in it. But I do think we needed to see Superman struggle in a way. It does sort of dodge that Superman problem of him being too invincible that he could take on anything by having him have a lot to do. But we also need to see him have this sort of struggle, savior moment. And it's not like he just like goes into it. He I-beams like into the Earth's crust to sort of get a leverage onto it. And he did soak up the energy from the yellow sun of
Objection,
the
Your
Earth before
Honor,
pushing
for
it up.
less than 30 seconds, he soaked up the energy of the sun.
Well, they cut the
Superman.
Film. You want to see
Superman historically
20
needed
minutes.
several years of exposure to sunlight to develop his powers. After being depowered, he's going to need a good, half hour, 45 minutes in the sun to even be able to, not shit himself.
Overruled. They did cut the film.
So anyway, yes, and it does nearly kill him. He's in the hospital for days on end afterwards. So it is a moment we needed because we don't want to see Superman invulnerable. We want to see him struggle to save the day. And the defense rests.
Both sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Mr. Colonel Smith, you may begin.
Thank you, Your Honor. First, I'd like to address the idea that the lifting the kryptonite continent was a moment we needed. While I do agree that you need to see a moment that Superman struggles, the answer to that isn't have him do something that is manifestly, according to the rules of his own universe, impossible for him to do. The answer to that is come up with a better fucking idea. And they did not do that. Also, yes, there are elements of the original films, little callbacks that you like the I hope this experience hasn't put you off flying, but what you're basically saying here is that the best parts of this movie were stolen from other films. This movie is, as I said, it's a hard thing for me to prosecute. It's a hard thing, even harder than some other Superman films would be. I love Superman. I would have no problem prosecuting Man of Steel. I love Superman. I would have no problem prosecuting the despicable pile of horse shit that is Batman versus Superman. It pains me to prosecute this movie because there are so many near misses. There are so many brushes with greatness where here's an opportunity to make something great. Let's go the other way. here's an opportunity to get that nostalgic, I love the Donner Superman films, so, let's give them just enough of that nostalgia to make them all the angrier when we miss that train by making Superman a depressed emo kid. There was a contemporaneous review. I wish I knew the author at this point. I still remember the review. I would credit the author. He began his review with, "Somewhere in the Fortress of Solitude, an iPod is playing James Blunt." And that was the perfect description of this Superman. Brandon Routh has the capability of being a joyous, hopeful Superman. He's proven it subsequently. He was not given that opportunity in this movie, and I think that's its greatest crime, is that this movie was so disliked that Brandon Routh went from having a 3-picture deal to play Superman to not playing him again until he did a crossover on television. We were robbed, this movie, by its ineptitude, by Bryan Singer being too busy sexually harassing people on set to write a good script.
Oh my god!
I appreciate your diplomacy.
It robbed us of potentially the best Superman since Christopher Reeve, and it robbed us of a good Lois Lane by casting somebody 3 years out of high school as Lois Lane. I believe Kate Bosworth was 21, possibly 22 when she did this role. Kate Bosworth isn't a bad actress. She was a terrible Lois Lane. As awful as the Zack Snyder films are, give me Amy Adams Lois Lane over Kate Bosworth any day. Ultimately, this movie is guilty of being a bad film because it misses so many opportunities. It takes so many wrong turns, and most importantly, it comes so close to being right, and then just says, fuck it, why bother? And with that, I yield to the defense.
Thank you. Mr. Haslar, you may present your closing argument.
When in that deliberation room, you must remember the votes need not be unanimous. It has therefore become your decision. You alone would condemn us, and you alone would be held responsible by me. You have been known to let off much worse films than this. Dark Phoenix comes to mind. I offer you a chance for greatness. Take it. Join us. You will bow down before Superman returns. I swear it. No matter if it takes an eternity, you will bow down before me. Kneel! Kneel!
Objection. Quoting a better film.
Sorry about that.
Defending a bad film with a good one.
I need to remember to take my crazy pills before stepping into the courtroom, because when I don't, I tend to turn into cinematic supervillains. Let me just take this here, and I'll be better in a few minutes.
Who is this imbecile that I may kill him?
Thank you both. Members of the jury, Mr. Robb Maynard, Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, and Mr. The Return of the Ryan Luis Rodriguez returns. You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
Right through that door. My bonny lass kicked me out of our apartment last night, so just move my stuff out of the way.
Oh, I feel bad now. Oh, poor bailiff.
All right, guys. A very interesting trial. I think what's most important is that the judge actually laughed at his own nickname this time, and that's very rare.
It's never happened before. It's never happened before.
Never happened before. May never happen again.
That's true.
So Ryan, what are your thoughts going into this?
So it's strange when the prosecution started listing all of his grievances. I started looking at my notes, and I was like, "Yep, that's on there. Yep, that's on there too. Okay, yeah." It's oh god, I wish I liked this movie. I really do. It's not great. I appreciate it conceptually. Like, I love the idea. It's such an esoteric, strange thing to do in this kind of franchise world, to say that the Superman 3 and 4 don't count. We're following up 1 and 2. I think that that's a clever idea. However, those two movies, especially the second one, which sucks, have issues that they need to deal with. And unfortunately, I think that this continues the stuff that I don't like about those movies. And I think that's the biggest sin that it commits.
And when you're saying the one that sucks, you're talking about 4.
No, talk about 2.
Oh, okay.
The Deuce.
The Deuce. Okay. See, because I like Superman 3. So when they're like, we're just ignoring Superman 3, like, Richard Pryor, come on.
And the cyborg lady. That was horrifying.
Yeah, there's a robot lady at the end of it.
Yeah, no, I know.
Scared the pants off of me when I was a child.
Yeah, come on. Richard Pryor was paid in cocaine. But anyway, we're not talking about Superman 3. One of the things I like that the prosecution talked about was the time jump, right? Because, I mean, the first film's 78, this film's 2006, but Superman is gone for only 5 years, and yet both films are basically contemporaneous, right? I mean, there's cell phones everywhere when he returns. And so to say that they're direct sequels to each other is just sort of ignoring all the continuity of everything we see around them, right? I mean, Lois is younger now than she was when she left.
And she's wearing a terrible wig.
Yeah, and she has a kid somehow. Doesn't look like she had any kid. Jimmy Olsen has gotten no promotion at all. And even Lex Luthor looks a little better. Possibly sucking the souls of children.
Oh God.
As far as the Luthor thing, I'm trying to just think of Kevin Spacey's performance in a bubble here. Because I mean, we let convicted sex offender Jeffrey Jones off the hook in the past.
We did do that. That's all on you, not me, by the way.
I know especially Dylan left him off the hook.
No, I just said
his Luthor's still not great, but it's not one of the worst things in this movie.
It's better than Hackman. I'll give him that.
I don't know.
Hey, where was Otis in this movie? Damn it!
Otis is Parker Posey.
Turned into Parker Posey.
Is basically Otis.
Big
improvement. I know, but come on!
Big improvement. And here's the thing. Why was Parker Posey not Lois? Not only would she be
That's what I said.
Oh,
that's not
God,
what you
that
said.
Would be amazing.
That's exactly what I said.
What I said,
so good.
And then you said it after.
Jerk.
I was first. You're a liar.
That is not true.
It is
I would
true.
love this movie. If that
I'm cutting all this, but it's absolutely true. I said Parker Posey should be Lois because at the time of this movie, when it was made, 06, Parker Posey was like 38, and so she would have been pretty, not quite, but a believable amount older than Margot Kidder was when she was in the first movie.
She's got that energy.
She has the energy. She's a little crazy. And she really wants to fuck Brandon Routh. You could tell.
Me too.
That's Kevin Spacey. It got me too.
Or like hashtag me too. Am I right?
Yeah, that's a joke I just made.
I did it better.
So yeah, the jump is weird, and everything about Hackman's plan, not Hackman, Spacey's plan is terrible. Luthor's plan is terrible.
The biggest problem, though, is that that's not what Lex Luthor does. Like, he's a corporate titan who experiments with technology and wants to win the hearts and minds of the people while actually being a piece of shit. He's not interested in real estate. Why does every single movie with Lex Luthor have to be about fucking real estate?
I'm
tired of this shit.
I think it's the sequel.
They keep aping the Hackman performance. I have no idea why live-action Superman feels the need that Lex Luthor needs to be Gene Hackman. If you look at something like Smallville,
or the animated series.
Well, even in the animated series, he didn't. I mean, I'm just talking live action. We could get into the animated series.
That's fair.
That's fair. But live action, like Michael Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor, is much more compelling and much more interesting. But the second we get to feature films, like, he's got to be like this goofball Three Stooges reject. I don't get it either.
John Cryer's version is better too.
Yeah, a little bit actually. There's that great bit when he actually visits Tom Welling's Superman and Tom Welling decks him. It was pretty great. All the crossover stuff was great that Colonel Smith brought up.
Totally.
So anyway, I just want to
I don't mean to stick my head into the jury room, but I'd also like to say that John Shea's Lex Luthor on Lois and Clark was also better. I'll see you guys later.
I mean, that's a fair.
You gotta
point.
lock that door.
You're right.
Yeah. I want to push back though on the prosecution a bit. Brendan Roth is terrible. Everyone is terrible in this movie. This movie is absolute
Not
garbage.
Parker
It is
Posey.
the worst Superman movie, bar none. I'll take the Snyderverse over this.
True.
Yes, no, I will take Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman over this. This movie
Quest for Peace
is so. I'll take the Quest for Peace over this. This movie is such a piece of hot garbage. I can't stand it. I'm not even going to pretend to be objective. It is guilty, guilty, guilty.
It is hot garbage, but it's not nearly the worst Superman movie.
It is the worst. It is the worst Superman movie. You could throw in the animated movies too. Throw in Superman Brainiac Attacks, where they just reused all the.
Okay, now you're out of line.
I'm going all in. Damn it! You have no idea, because like the prosecution, I wanted to love Superman Returns. I saw it opening. Actually, I was talking to my little brother about it. He goes, "Yeah, you sent me like a huge text message after the midnight release about how disappointed you were." I didn't remember doing that, but evidently I did.
I'm pretty sure I was at that midnight release with the juror here, and I don't fall asleep in movies, and I fell asleep in Superman Returns.
It's everything about this movie is bad. I can't stand.
I don't like the way it looks, but I will not say that it's the best. Or the
I
worst
woke
Superman
up
movie.
and he was lifting a continent of kryptonite, and I just went back to sleep. Like
someone much smarter than me once called this movie
Impossible.
Superman Lifts Heavy Things. Like that's basically what the movie is, and I don't disagree. But also, it's not the worst Superman movie.
It is the worst Superman movie. 100% the worst.
I can't accept that someone's smarter than you, Ryan, though. But I will accept.
Oh, there's so many people.
That
They're not in this courtroom, but there's so many people.
Take that, Ben.
I don't know, Ryan. Which way are you leaning?
I'm actually not sure, because the prosecution started listing things one by one when he started complaining, and I was like, yes, absolutely. And then once it starts getting to the good stuff, I'm like, no, that's not what's good about this movie. So I am very torn.
Well, what do you think is good about this movie?
I think, well, first of all, I agree with the part that Brandon Routh is great. He's given dog shit to do, but if he was given the right material, he would be fantastic. However, I don't think that this movie looks good. I think this movie looks like shit. And it all stems from the fact that they wanted the super suit to really pop, so they took color out of the entire movie and put it all in the suit. And that is an interesting idea, but unfortunately it has the side effect of making everything look brown. Everything looks like fucking rust, and it looks drab and boring. I hate it.
Yeah, the suit's terrible. The logo design is terrible.
I want comic book movies to be in color, that were published in color. Come on. Is it that hard to ask? I'm asking.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Answer the man. So what's what verdict?
I don't know. I'm on the fence. I want to hear what you guys have.
Man,
no, you got to pick one.
Double guilty. I get 2 votes. This movie is so guilty.
You got to pick first, Ryan. I'm foreman. You got to pick.
He's the foreman, so you got to lock it in, Ryan. You know it's guilty. You know it's guilty.
Just follow your heart.
Guilty.
All right, nice. So it won't matter what I say, but I also think this movie's guilty.
Of course you do.
Yeah, I famously fell asleep. I never fall asleep in theaters, but I fell asleep during this movie, and I woke up just as the credits started, and I shouted, "Oh, did that suck?" And pretty much the whole crowd laughed. It's a great moment for me personally, and this movie is real bad. So let's get out there and tell that a very handsome judge.
That's been disputed. Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of The People versus Superman Returns, we find the defendant guilty of being a bad movie.
The verdict is so rendered. I sentence Superman Returns to the Phantom Zone, where Brandon Routh will be placed in suspended animation next to Nicolas Cage. Court is adjourned.
This is Clark Kent from the Daily Planet, recently bought out by the Gobblegoo Gazette. Mr. Smith, how do you feel about today's verdict?
I think it was an appropriate verdict. It's always a sad day when you see a character that you personally have a great deal of affection for going down this path, but if they're not held to account, they won't learn. So hopefully this verdict will set us on the course to an actual good Superman movie at some point in the near future, although I wouldn't hold my breath.
Thank you very much. Mr. Big Ben Haslar, it seems your evil scheme was foiled.
Yes, Kirk. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't believe the jury's verdict today. It doesn't make sense to me that I live in a world where Dark Phoenix is a good movie and this is a bad one. It doesn't mix. These two ideas can't exist in the same space. But if you do like Superman Returns, fortunately it's on DVD and it's always around. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's all the time we have from the steps today. We now go back to the studio for post-trial analysis.
Those two verdicts are going to collide, and they're going to turn into Ron Silver from time to
Dark Phoenix.
It's because I wasn't in the jury for Dark Phoenix.
We didn't say Dark Phoenix was good, just not bad.
Yes. Well, I said it was bad, but I was feeling merciful.
Well, look,
it is entirely bad.
I live in a world where the predecessor to this podcast found Batman versus Superman innocent, and I live in a world where Superman Returns is a bad movie.
Those were the KTMA days.
Those are the KTMA days.
Batman versus Superman is a good movie.
You're a fucking idiot.
No.
Oh, wow.
No, Dylan, you stop it. No.
One day, BVS will have a show. It'll have its Gamera season 3 episode.
I ain't gonna be there. I'll tell you that.
You're gonna be there, Ryan. We're gonna tape you down to a chair and tickle you the whole time you watch it. Oh yeah.
Let's extend my virtual hand and say, "Well fought, Colonel Smith. It was a good fight."
Good job, counselor. Right around the time this movie came out, a novel came out called "It's Superman." I don't even know if it's still in print, but it was like Superman as told by Steinbeck. It was a novel about Superman becoming Superman during the 1930s, during the Great Depression, riding the rails and finally getting a job. It was amazing. And as I was watching Superman Returns, I had just read that novel and I thought, that's the movie they should have made. Just go in a totally different direction with it. Make it, if you're going to do the 1930s art direction, let's make this a totally, 1930s thing. New York, Lex Luthor was like a crooked alderman in New York City. It had giant steam-powered robots, but it was a literary novel, believe it or not. But it was
like the Fleischer cartoons.
Bryan Singer didn't do
it.
Because the Fleischer cartoons had the robots.
It was like John Steinbeck wrote a Fleischer cartoon.
They could have called it the Capes of Wrath.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine that as like an HBO limited series instead of Superman Returns? It would have been freaking fantastic.
But I want to switch gears here, and so Ryan, what have you been up to lately? What has been keeping you busy?
Which Ryan are you talking to?
You.
Yes.
We know what keeps Ryan busy.
Well, I mean, it's been I am currently, and whether it will ever see the light of day in podcast form, I know not, but I am currently writing a Shakespearean blank verse parody of Alien called One Xenomorph of Nostromo.
No, that sounds. I've read some of that, and it's excellent. It's very funny. My favorite character is the cat.
Yeah, Jones the cat, who in my idea would just be played by an actor wearing a black leotard and cat ears.
I am available.
Functions as the chorus. So Jones the cat comes out and sets the scene, and then in between scenes he just walks out and says like meow. He doesn't actually make the sound, he just says the word meow and then walks away.
Yeah, for anyone who's
basically when I need somebody to fill out the meter.
Meow.
Anyone
I'm auditioning now.
No, see, not like that. He would just come out and say meow.
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 Exactly. I knew how it would go.
Meow.
No, you can't even have enthusiasm with it. It has to seem slightly beneath you.
Cats are boring. Haven't you ever seen a cat?
But anyone who's not familiar with some of Ryan's works, he's done an entire Shakespearean version of Plan 9 from Outer Space. And that is online for your listening pleasure, and features yours truly.
Yeah, you played Jeff Trent.
Yeah.
Also features Dana Gould as one of the aliens, as Eros, the alien captain.
Yep. There was a lot of great people in that show, so definitely that's.
God knows how he pulled that off. Yeah.
Tim Blaney.
Jaleel White.
Tim Blaney.
Blaney.
Yes, he played Johnny Five and Frank the Pug from the Men in Black movies. He was in that
And he's in the new
Shakespearean
Gypsy.
version of Plan 9 from Outer Space as well.
No,
so.
it's a tremendous cast and it's a great script, and I know it's online if people Google it. I can't remember the full
Plan the
title because
Nine.
it's ridiculous.
The Tragical History of Plan the Ninth.
Yes,
Yes.
that is it. So I do hope that you get a Shakespearean version of Alien, off the ground sometime soon, whether on stage or in podcast form. And I hope that Ryan is nowhere near it.
Ryan with a spray bottle, the other Ryan.
Yeah, bad Ryan. So Smitty, if you, we always ask our guests for a recommendation of a film that they think people should check out. So what is a film you think people should check out?
Have you guys seen Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Never.
I've heard of
it.
that one.
Actually,
That's a deep cut.
a great movie it's old, and a lot of people have probably already checked it out, but I always throw out, if you like sci-fi, Ex Machina, which is one of the best hard sci-fi movies I've seen in years.
Good pick.
It's a few years old now, but it's a brilliant film. Oscar Isaac, Alicia Vikander, and Donald Gleason. It's basically a four-hander between four actors, or the only ones with, I think, a helicopter pilot shows up in 2 seconds, but it's basically a four-hander between four actors in one location, and it is the best hard sci-fi movie I've seen in years.
Was that before Star Wars ruined them or after? Those two actors.
During.
During.
Yeah, I believe it was during. It might have been during, yeah. But,
I haven't had a four-hander in years.
I'd also like to object to that. I know the trial is actually over.
So noted. Let's on to our other lawyer, Ben. What have you got for us today? What's your recommendation?
Well, despite the fact that I was court assigned to the Superman Returns film, I'm hard pressed to think any Superman films that I love.
You volunteered.
At best, I think they're decent enough. So instead of going with a Superman film, I'm going with Unbreakable. And if you still haven't seen this film, let it serve to you as a reminder that M. Night Shyamalan and indeed Bruce Willis have made excellent films at one point. And
turns out the guys did the whole time.
Yeah, and that was Abducto Al Shyamalan. What's that term? That legal term?
Reducto Al Shyamalan.
Reducto, not abducto Al Shyamalan. He's not Kevin Spacey.
No, that's Signs.
Unbreakable is a great film.
Unbreakable
is good, though. Yeah,
is a very good one.
I mean, The Sixth Sense is a great film. Shyamalan is capable of greatness. He just doesn't always choose to exercise it.
Once he's restrained, I think he's great.
He gets a lot of pressure on him for the greatness. You know what I mean?
I think that's true. People were calling him the next Hitchcock with his first major studio release. That's a lot of pressure.
See, the weird thing is I called him the next Hitchcock after seeing Unbreakable and not after seeing The Sixth Sense. And then he kind of pissed it down his leg immediately.
I still like Signs.
Signs has its moments. I mean, ultimately, if you stop to think about the movie for a second, it doesn't make sense.
Agreed.
Yes.
The thing about
but you don't stop, you just keep going.
The thing about Signs that keeps you watching is basically just the chemistry between the actors is good. River Phoenix and Gibson are funny together.
River Phoenix? No!
Oh, Jesus, Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, River Phoenix, very different.
I kind of like Lady in the Water too. I think that gets a bad rap.
No, you and your Lady in the Water. Get the
It
hell out of
has
here.
some whimsy to it.
Get the hell
Not
out
Paul
of here
Giamatti
with that.
though. I don't really like Paul Giamatti.
So the one likable part.
You're not like Paul Giamatti. You've seen John Adams? Good
Oh,
God.
he's great in John Adams, actually.
Maybe
I do like Paul Giamatti.
Ryan, original, or OG Ryan, what is your recommendation?
My recommendation this week is all about the behind-the-scenes cock-up that eventually led to Bryan Singer making a Superman movie. It's the late John Schnepp's documentary, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened, from 2015. If you want to know how in the hell this shit happened, and want a fascinating look at a Tim Burton Superman movie that would have been terrible, horrible, wackadoo brilliance, you want to see this. It is currently streaming on Showtime.
That's a Nicolas Cage one?
One question, how the hell did this Joker become OG Ryan?
OG on this show. Again, you're KTMA Ryan.
Thank you.
You know, you're that crow.
Oh, I'm Dr. Larry Earhart.
Yes. Or you're that crow with really bulbous eyes.
This is TV's Ryan.
Yeah, exactly. TV's RLR.
As bad as the last few Superman movies have been, I sort of have to thank my lucky stars that the Tim Burton Superman movie didn't happen.
I wish.
I mean, it would have been a glorious mistake. Yeah, I mean, Nicolas Cage as Superman would have been a glorious, glorious mistake. But at the same time, as a fan of Superman, I don't want to see Superman insisting somebody puts the money back in the box.
It would have been such a good riff tracks, though.
I would pay good money to see Superman reciting the alphabet like a lunatic.
There was a sketch that came out, I think it was on Saturday Night Live or Mad TV, when Nicolas Cage was being rumored, and they did Leaving Metropolis, where Superman was an alcoholic. Oh, it was so funny. Like, he's in an AA meeting, he's like, I'm Clark Kent, and I'm an alcoholic. And they're like, hi, Superman! And he's wearing his costume.
In the script that they wrote for the Tim Burton movie, there is a extended scene where he's in therapy in the suit.
Oh, Jesus.
I would pay good money to peer into the alternate universe where this movie fucking exists.
I gotta protect Clark Kent's reputation.
Dylan, what is your recommendation this week?
All right, I'm going to we were just talking about, like, make Superman do something new, different, and interesting. And as people know in the comics, DC has something called Elseworld, and they've done all sorts of things. You know, there's been, like, Batman being the Green Lantern and stuff like that. And one that happened with Superman was called Superman Red Sun, where he landed in the Soviet Union and was basically raised up to be like the Soviet Superman. Like, he worked as, like, Stalin's right-hand man, eventually takes over the Soviet Union, and they turned that into an animated feature in 2020 with Jason Isaacs doing the voice of Red Sun Superman. And it's not as good as the comics, but, you know, it's not bad. And if you want to just see Superman with a different take, that's a good one to do.
They're doing some solid stuff with the home video animation.
For sure.
And that's the sad thing. The Superman animated series, from like the late 90s.
Yes.
Take any random episode of the Superman animated series from the late 90s. It is better than the last 3 Superman movies.
It's the last time,
I will agree.
I'd agree with that too.
And it's the best Lex Luthor ever.
And the best Lex Luthor. We owe Bruce Timm a lot. We owe him a lot.
Clancy Brown was Lex Luthor in the animated series, right?
Yes.
That's correct, yes.
Yes, he was great. There have been a lot of great Lex Luthors. I think John Cryer does a good job on the Supergirl show.
I think he does a better job than Kevin Spacey, but I wouldn't say that he's perfect.
He's not. Well, he's not the. I thought John Shea was a chilling Lex Luthor on the Lois and Clark series from the early 90s.
I still might have to give the nod to Rosenbaum. I thought bringing that young Lex to life, that's not an easy thing to do.
No.
I think he did a very good job. And he was doing it in the shadow of, what's the name of the guy who played his father? Glover.
John Glover.
Donald Glover.
John Glover, who's such a tremendous
No.
actor. So to have to act opposite him and still bring all the weight and force.
I think the moral of the story is that basically everybody who's ever played the role of Lex Luthor did a better job than Kevin Spacey.
God, yeah, I know that
I'm
might
saying
be
better than Gene
I'm
Hackman.
fine with that.
My issue with Hackman is that he's playing a Bond villain. He's not playing Lex Luthor. And it's not, part of it, the whole toupee thing bugs the shit out of me, but besides
Because he wouldn't shave his head,
yes,
With the bald
but
spot on the back.
the worst thing
Like
is
a
that
wig as a
he's
bald
such an interesting fucking character and so scary, just as the guy who doesn't need superpowers, just the guy in the suit who sits in the tall tower and does the things that we don't.
You also have to remember
does.
that Hackman is a pre-crisis Luthor. When Superman the movie came out, Luthor was retooled into a dirty businessman in 1985. Before
yes, but
that,
he was a scientist before that.
He was a criminal scientist.
Yes,
but he was known as a criminal. He wasn't. What the crisis did was make him untouchable to Superman because he was seemingly operating within the law. Lex Luthor as a villain, quite frankly, pre-crisis never made a whole lot of sense to me because it's just like he's a criminal. He's openly a criminal. Just fucking arrest him. You know, he's an old man.
How hard is it to find the Legion of Doom headquarters? Come on.
Yeah. Whereas, like post-crisis, when they tooled him into basically Donald Trump, you know, with an intellect, you know, it's like, okay, well, Superman, he isn't a worthy adversary because he can use the levers of power to make himself untouchable. And that was sort of the downfall of the Donner Luthor, was that he was operating, you know, Luthor was the famous Superman villain, but he had not been retooled into that yet.
Yeah, so Luthor's power creep is his intelligence and wealth. He gets smarter and richer in every iteration.
Yeah, yeah. So
I mean, I'm gonna give my recommendation here, and you know,
nobody
as we
cares,
all know,
Rob.
Sorry, I have to go. It's my turn now. You know, as we all know, many of our most beloved film and television characters have had the audacity to return. Batman, Mary Poppins, Jafar, the Mummy, even the Killer Tomatoes. But I'm going to recommend one of my favorite films to portray such a comeback, and that is 1984's
Eddie and the Cruisers too.
The Return of Godzilla. Also known as Godzilla 1984. It's the first entry into the Heisei era of Godzilla films. It's a direct sequel to the 54 Gojira, and so it ignores all the canonical lore of the 14 films released in between. But if you find yourself interested in the franchise due to the recent release of Godzilla vs. Kong, and you don't know where to jump in, or you're turned off by the outdated effects of the older films, first off, shame on you.
Exactly.
But second, this one might be the right balance for you to get invested in the whole series.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Does Godzilla, for some fucking reason, have an irritating asthmatic kid who doesn't contribute anything to the plot?
That's Son of Godzilla.
Not in this one.
Yeah, that's Son of Godzilla. That's a previous film.
But is this the
Does
one
he
with
throw a
Dr. Pepper
piano at
commercial?
somebody and then is useless for the rest of the movie?
A couple times, but
You won the case. Stop rubbing it in.
Now, doesn't Raymond Burr show up in this one too?
no. So
does he?
That's the American version.
That's
That's the American
so
version.
the American distribution rights were acquired by our good friend Roger Corman's New World
God.
Pictures, and the film was
Corman.
subsequently retitled Godzilla 1985, and it was heavily re-edited to feature Raymond Burr as an allusion to, you know, Godzilla King of the Monsters from '56.
And there's a Dr. Pepper commercial in it too.
Yes, correct. But luckily, that version of the film is not included on the Kraken releasing Blu-ray that just came out a few years ago. In fact, it's rather hard to find, so you are probably relatively safe from ever having to view it.
I
Shit.
saw Godzilla 1985 in 1986.
I believe that.
I rented it from the local video store when there were such a thing. Not even a Blockbuster, a local mom and pop video store. This is how long ago I saw that movie.
Yes, indeed. Were you kind and rewind, though?
I don't know. I was
6.
8.
I've never known you to be kind, though. So
I'm pretty sure my mom rewound it before returning it to the...
your mom, very
was
kind.
Young enough that I probably wasn't allowed to operate the video player on my own, because at the time they were very bulky, expensive pieces of equipment.
After that time you put the grilled cheese in there, I don't
Well, let me
blame
just put it, our VCR had it didn't have a remote control. It had a button you could click to pause recording so you could cut commercials out, and that button was at the end of a 12-foot wire that you had to plug in to the VCR.
Was it all hand crank?
No, you started it with a pull cord and it ran on kerosene.
Steam power.
And every time you press the button, it goes,
the movie would stop and then we'd have to feed the hamster to get it going again.
It was one of those VCRs where when you pushed eject, the tape didn't like slide out of a slot in the front. A carriage popped up from the
Yes.
top.
I remember that.
But with that walk down memory lane, we are all out of show for this week. But we do want to thank our guest, Ryan Smitty Smith, for joining us. It was a pleasure having you. We hope to have you back very soon.
As long as you don't keep calling me Smitty, possibly.
We'll see what we can do.
we'll work on it.
If you don't call me Smitty, you'll have me back soon. If you keep calling me Smitty, you're going to see me a lot sooner than you'd like.
Oh no.
Colonel Smith.
And anyway, we hope everyone else will join us again soon in a less threatening manner as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
Later. Someone spray Ryan again.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.